if you remember the 70s, you weren't there.
What do you mean by
Many
that?
of these decisions were made in clouds of smoke.
Okay.
And many of us were chemically altered at certain times.
So it's fair to say that the Star Wars holiday special was a little bit drug-induced.
Almost everything that was being done in Hollywood was drug-induced at that period.
Hey, I'm Sam Sanders. Thank you so much for checking out my show. It is an entertainment show. And one thing I find very entertaining is television. All television, good television, mid television, bad television. And this week, I'm so honored to have a guest who claims to have written perhaps more bad TV than anybody else. He has a new book where he talks all about it. And we're going to talk about his book and TV and good TV and bad TV and one Star Wars holiday special. I'm so excited to have you here. Tell folks who you are.
I'm moist. The concept that I wrote, I held the title of the worst TV show writer ever. That's great.
You're the only one who made a book out of it.
Exactly. I know.
Yeah.
I thought that was why I did it. I'm so excited to be on KCRW. I just want to
Good to
tell
have
you
you
that
here.
because I'm a big supporter.
Good.
From back in the day when Ruth Hirschman used to read the New York Times to me.
Wow.
I'd be lying in
Wait,
bed.
they read the New York Times on KCRW?
She came on. She was the general manager, and she read the New York Times because the theory was people couldn't afford to buy it out here back then.
Those poor
when it was only
Angelinos.
printed, And so she would read, today in Saigon. She had a very New York accent. The Prime Minister, Vin Hudao, said that more troops are required. And I would lie in bed listening to her thinking, I'm back in New York. And my mother is reading the news too.
For those who don't have the privilege yet to know who you are and what you do, tell folks who you are and what you do.
I'm a writer. I'm a writer. I'm a comedian. I'm a stand-up. I'm a stripper. That's if you have IMAX in your home, I'm available for you only.
Yeah.
But I've been writing a lot of stuff I came out here 50 years ago. Please get me the digitalis now. And I started. I was writing variety television, which died a death during that period because. Cable came in, and you didn't have to watch the Carol Burnett show to see a star that you liked.
Yeah.
You could get Madonna 24/7 on MTV.
Yeah.
And also you couldn't compete with Saturday Night Live because they were doing very hip stuff at 11:30 on Saturday night.
go.
And so anything you did on a Tuesday at 9 o'clock looked square and flat.
You have yet to tell our listeners and viewers your name and your book title.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. You're a writer. You're behind the scenes.
I'm Travis Kelce's mother. There's a striking resemblance. I know at the camera here you can see red glasses, blonde, and a little Zoftic. I'm Bruce Vilanch, and I've written a whole bunch of stuff. I wrote a book about the worst TV shows in history, all of which I wrote, and how I survived, and in fact, how they have survived.
What's the book called?
It seemed like a bad idea at the time.
Yeah.
And it did,
Okay.
I mean, they always seemed like terrible, but then they say, the next question is, you're paying me how much? Oh, I think I can see a way to make that work. Yes, I think so.
So I had the privilege of reading your book and also hearing the audiobook. And there was one or two nights recently where I went to sleep to the sound of your voice and then woke up to it as well.
Oh, wow.
It's not bad.
At last, somebody's
you got a career
doing
in radio.
that.
So there are a ton of TV writers. There's a ton of good TV and bad TV out there. I've never seen a TV writer say, let me write a book about my worst TV writing. What made you want to do this?
I toyed with a memoir, but I didn't want to write a memoir like everybody else's.
Why not?
And because, why be like everybody else if you can be singular?
Yeah.
And I started doing podcasts during COVID. I was a guest on a lot of podcasts, and they were hosted by people way younger, people, your age and younger, who were asking me about television shows I'd written before I was born. They were born.
Yeah.
And I thought, how do they know this? Well, the internet had come in, and all of these things had shown up on YouTube. Stuff that we assumed was dead and buried after we did it.
Oh, yeah.
But the internet, my ass is riddled with bite marks from everything I've written. It's come back to me because of the internet.
Do you think you would have written some of that stuff differently had you known the internet would bring it back?
No, probably not. No, I don't think so. I was younger and not that filled with foresight.
Gotcha.
I was not. It was what was available at the time to do, and if I had something else to do. But I seem to have a facility for writing for other people, and sketch comedy and that kind of stuff.
So you're doing these podcasts during pandemic.
I thought there's a book in this
on the bad stories.
Yeah, on how I wrote all these shows, the Star Wars holidays, but the Brady Bunch Variety Hour, Paul Lynde Halloween special.
Yeah.
I mean, all of these things that were gone, but are evidently not forgotten.
Yes, not at all forgotten. I
No.
remember when I first discovered the Star Wars holiday special. I'll never forget it. I want to talk about that, but I also want to make sure people know you didn't just write bad stuff. You've written good stuff. You've won 2 Emmys for your
Yeah.
writing on the Oscars.
Yeah.
You've had a career that's had a lot of good as well.
Oh yeah, I
Let's
have.
say
I wrote
that.
25 Oscar shows. And as
You wrote
say,
25 Oscars.
25.
We're going to talk
and
about that.
Informally continue helping people.
Oh, really?
Well,
I want
they
to hear
get a
about
lot
that. So let's start with, I think, the best entry point into the kind of bad writing you were doing decades ago that I think still stands the test of time.
Oh, boy.
Let's start with the Star Wars holiday special.
It
Let's
lives.
first set the scene for when this thing happens. So it's in the first wave of Star Wars mania. Executives are like, this movie's doing well. Before the next one comes out, how can we keep the energy going? Someone said, let's make a Christmas special with all the Star Wars characters.
Well, it was a year after the movie came out.
Okay.
So the crest had been ridden, and
And it's hard to overstate how big Star Wars mania was,
Star
that
Wars,
first film.
yeah, Star Wars.
You think like the Eras Tour, Taylor Swift stuff, that's nothing compared to early
It
Star Wars.
it was a blockbuster, but there were certain quarters of the population that didn't think it was that impressive,
Huh.
and they thought it was a fun summer thing.
Mhm.
No one realized it would become the Scientology of the nerds, that it would become a religioso experience
Yeah,
for people.
yeah.
It was just kind of a fun ride, and I think George Lucas realized that because his next one, The Empire Strikes Back, was in pre-production at the time, and he knew it wouldn't be in theaters for another year, and he wanted to keep the pot stirring. He
Yeah.
also knew that The Empire was a much darker movie than the first one, which is now known as Episode 4, A New Hope.
Aha.
Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, was Jungian and had Yoda. It had a lot
Yeah.
of Joseph Conrad, that kind of mythology in it,
Yeah.
and a lot of heavy speak.
Mhm.
The first one, was like a romp. It was like a Republic Pictures Saturday morning serial
Yeah.
with the wipes from one scene to another. It
Uh-huh.
was pretty much action adventure. It wasn't all that deep,
Yeah.
but George was going deeper, and part of that was he had come up with a holiday he wanted to put in called Life Day, and that was
And this
like-
is, let's stop
yeah.
right there. So this Star Wars holiday special was not about Christmas. It was about Life Day.
it was about Life Day.
What is Life Day?
Life Day is what George's idea. You celebrate life, and it was supposed to be an intergalactic thing. That
Okay.
in fact, the holiday special ends with the Life Day celebration.
We love it.
And he never let go of it. In fact, he put it in when he sold his company to Disney.
Mhm.
He put in on Disney Plus a Star Wars holiday special, which is called the Star Wars Holiday Special, with Legos.
Oh, that's cute.
With a Lego Daisy Ridley who looks just like Rosie O'Donnell. It's a very bizarre thing to watch.
Yes.
But they're celebrating Life Day. He has
Okay.
not let go. I don't know if he's aware. I'm sure he is. But there's May the 4th.
Uh-huh.
Is May the 4th be with you.
That's the
Star Wars
holiday, yeah.
that the religiosos celebrate religiosely.
So then what year is this?
78.
78.
This is
Star Wars is
78.
still riding high, but there's no second movie yet.
Yeah.
Lucas wants a holiday special centered around Life Day. How do you get
Well,
involved?
he wants to keep the brand alive, and
Yes.
CBS,
Mhm.
always anxious to get the youth market
Oh, yeah.
involved.
Oh, yeah.
Says that this will be great because we'll have the marketing will be simple. It'll be off of the big old Star Wars movie,
Mhm.
and it will bring a different demographic to the network. And so George he told me 10 stories written, and he was going to make 6 movies, which he did make. There was a little 30-year hiatus,
Yeah.
but he did make them. And he had 4 other stories, and this was the last one, and it was an original musical. And
A musical.
yeah, and I thought, this is odd because why would you sell an original musical starring characters, the Wookiees, who can't sing,
Or
dance,
speak.
speak English or any known language,
Yeah.
walk in their costumes,
Yeah.
do anything but shoot lightsabers at people?
But George
and
wants to
go,
do it.
you
Yeah.
know, which is-
So George wants to do it.
he wants to do it.
And you say, I'll
I-
help write it.
Well, yeah. What happened was it was sold as a variety special, which in CBS's eyes meant a big show full of stars. And
Let's stop right there.
Yeah.
No one said making a variety special with singing and dancing actors alongside Chewbacca. No one said this might not be a great idea.
no, I don't think anybody did. I think they said they were going to hitch their wagon to the Star Wars uh, Millennium Falcon.
Okay. So then, for those who haven't seen it, what was it?
Well, it was. It's a book show. It's a story.
Uh-huh.
It's Han Solo and Chewbacca are on the way home in the Millennium Falcon
Uh-huh.
to the Wookiee planet Kashyyyk.
Uh-huh.
With 2 Y's and 2 K's,
Okay.
of course. And that's where for the Life Day celebration.
For the
We're going
Life
to
Day
meet
celebration.
Chewbacca's family.
That's
there's
cute.
a wife, there's a grandfather, and there's a little Wookiee. And they make stops along the way because they're being chased by Imperial stormtroopers,
Oh.
who, as you recall, all look like late model Ford Fusions, as they are chasing them across the galaxy. And
Uh-huh.
so the big bugaboo was that the Wookiees don't speak. The Wookiees had to be translated. And
Who would translate for them?
well, the guest stars, because we could not use subtitles. This was 1978, and the prevailing wisdom was people will not read subtitles. But it's not uncommon back then. People wouldn't go to the movies if it was subtitled.
Really?
They would go to an English
and
dubbed
now
version.
everyone loves subtitles.
And now I've mentioned Lupita Nyong'o in the later movies does not speak a word of English.
Yeah.
In every line she says is subtitled.
So then they're trying to get back to celebrate Life Day.
Yeah.
They're being
trying-
chased, but along the way, stars come up to help
Right.
translate. Which
Art
stars?
Art Carney, who
Okay.
was from the Honeymooners and was a big comedian star on CBS. He plays Son Dan, who is an intergalactic Tupperware salesman, basically, and he's a member of the Rebel Alliance.
Okay.
And so he goes to visit
Uh-huh.
Chewbacca, who he's alarmed to discover is not home yet.
Really?
And so he has to deal with Mrs.
Okay.
Chewbacca.
And then B. Arthur, too, right?
And then B. Arthur, because they stopped
B.
on the
Arthur
way.
of the
Maud
Golden
at the
Girls and
time,
Maud at
later
the time.
Golden Girls. On the way back to Kashyyyk,
Uh-huh.
they have to avoid the stormtroopers, so they pull into Tatooine.
Mhm.
Now, if you know the Star Wars, Tatooine is the cantina.
Yeah.
Okay. So the cantina in our version was run by B. Arthur in her
Stop.
Statue of Liberty
Stop.
mode. Yes.
Stop.
Uh-huh.
The kids don't know. This was on broadcast TV
This was
back
on
in the
broadcast
70s.
TV, yeah.
For everyone to see.
Mhm.
So when you're making this special, putting this together, getting B. Arthur prepared to run the bar on Tatooine and hang out with Chewbacca, are you saying to yourself, I don't know if this is going to work, or are you like, let's go?
Well, some things need to be mentioned. First
Yes.
of all, if you remember the 70s, you weren't there.
What do you mean by
Many
that?
of these decisions were made in clouds of smoke.
Okay.
And many of us were chemically altered at certain times during the process.
Which drugs?
Oh, everything. I mean, I used to joke that Carrie Fisher and I snorted the Sweet and Low in the commissary. But that is an embellishment. It is.
So it's fair to say that the Star Wars holiday special was a little bit drug induced.
Well, almost everything that was being done in Hollywood was drug induced at that
Okay.
period. I mean,
Okay.
just go down the checklist of movies from that era, and you will see a whole lot of that.
Yeah.
So that was part of it. And also, if we had ever thought that 40 years later we'd be talking about this,
Yeah.
we might have paid closer attention.
Yeah. So then let's talk about how weird this special is.
Yeah.
If you're watching or listening, you can find snippets of it online, but it's hard to overstate how strange
the whole
this
thing
thing is.
online.
So in a lot of variety shows, you usually see actors and stars that you know and love singing or doing sketches. Cher, I think, was the queen of variety shows back in the day. But with this Star Wars holiday special, you have stars like B. Arthur in conversation and singing to Star Wars characters like Chewbacca.
Yeah.
And there's a moment in this special where B. Arthur of Maude and Golden Girls fame is singing to Chewbacca? That's
Not
the kind
to
of
Chewbacca.
special? Okay.
First of all, Bea was a Broadway star
Yes.
who had won a Tony for Mame. And
Yes, and
the
she can
original
sing. Yeah.
Yinton Fiddler on the Roof.
Yes.
So she could sing. She was the original pirate Jenny in Three Penny Opera by Bertolt Brecht and
Okay.
Kurt Weill, which is why she brought in a song from that she wanted to sing, the
So
Alabama
she wanted to
song.
sing a Broadway song.
She wanted to sing a song by Bertolt Brecht and Kurt Weill. I mean, they were Broadway, yes.
Yes. But she wanted to sing that in the Star Wars holiday
Right.
special.
She wanted to
Who
sing
did
the
she sing
Alabama
it to?
song, which you may know from Frank Zappa
Okay.
and the Weasels of Invention.
Who did she sing it to?
The Mothers of Invention. She was singing it to Harvey Korman, who was a Carol Burnett show regular, who
Gotcha.
did 3 amazing different characters on the show. One of them was an alien
Okay.
with a hole in his head, which is where he drank from. So she pours a drink into the hole in his head in one sequence while she's singing. Now, she couldn't sing the Alabama song, "Oh, show me the way to the next whiskey bar." And it was a big hippie hit with Frank
Mm-hmm.
Zappa. But it ends with, "I tell you, I will die." And we thought, nah, that's not exact. And then we went to the Bertolt Brecht estate in Germany, and they said 9,
Huh.
which was not the figure they asked for. It was no, just
Uh-huh.
no. He didn't write this, so she should sing this to a bunch of people dressed like carpets. This was not their idea. We had another song. We had Ken and Mitzi Welch, who wrote a lot of stuff for the Carol Burnett Show, wrote a very up with "Those were the days, my friend" kind of song
Mm-hmm.
that B sang instead. So it wasn't quite as dark.
So then this special that's that absurd makes it to screens. What is the public reaction to it?
It was on the weekend before Thanksgiving on a Friday night,
Uh-huh.
and it got a decent rating.
What is a decent rating?
Well, back then, a decent rating was like 20, 25. I mean,
20 million?
20 million.
20 million people watch this.
About that, yeah.
That's
Because there were only the
wild.
3 channels back then.
So y'all could have put on
Back
B reading the phone book and
then
somebody
you
would have
had
watched
to
it.
have a minimum of 17 to stay on the air.
So
That was
is part of why the Star Wars Holiday Special gets to be made because they know that whatever they put on millions, it will be watched by millions. There were
Yeah.
fewer options back then.
Right, and of course, this is sponsored television.
Yeah.
So if you have something to sell, you want to look and see. Well, Star Wars Holiday Special, kids will watch that, so I'll put my
The commercials
product on
in there.
and all that. It's not the kind of thing. I mean, if you were selling tampons, you wouldn't buy time on it.
Could you make something like the Star Wars Holiday Special today?
Oh, I don't think so, because Star Wars. Listen, George was terrified. He was. People thought he'd betrayed them. When
With
it
the
got
special?
on the internet, he got death threats. He got all kinds of.
He got
things.
death threats over
Oh
this.
yeah, people,
Why?
because, as I say, it's a religious experience for a lot of people, and they couldn't believe that
He
he had
defiled it.
exactly right. Defiling is the perfect way to describe
Wow.
it.
So
Yeah.
then this thing happens. One might say, all right, Bruce is never going to write a holiday special again because that one was weird.
I
But
wouldn't
you
say
go on
that.
to do other ones like the Paul Lynde Halloween
Well,
special.
that was a perfect
before.
match.
And then you do the Brady Bunch Hour, a musical variety show with the Brady Bunch. You keep doing these variety shows. What drew you to them?
Well, the money they kept. Well, it was fun to do it. First of all, it was, as I say, it was the '70s, and I seemed adept at writing for people. And I was writing screenplays at the same time, and I was selling them. They weren't getting made for every possible reason. Stars die, studios fall down. I mean, everything happened. But there was a lot of development in those days. Pauline Kael said, "Hollywood is where you can be encouraged to death." But they kept buying it, so I kept writing scripts. But these were fun to do.
They were
And
fun.
at the time. There were so many of these weird concepts. Wayne Newton at SeaWorld doing a duet with an orca.
Who did that?
Wayne Newton. Wayne Newton.
Did you write
Wayne
for that?
Newton. No,
Okay.
I somehow managed to avoid that one. But there were many strange little. There was a show called Battle of the Network Stars, where every star of a network show got into a tracksuit and did like competitions like
Reality
Charlie
TV.
Tilton with a shot put.
I love that. I want to talk a little bit about the Brady Bunch special variety show, the Brady
Yeah.
Bunch Hour.
That's right. Yeah.
This was basically the Brady Bunch as a show is a big deal. It's a hit, but those kids don't sing. That's the Partridge Family.
They sort of. Exactly right. It was conceived for the Partridge Family.
So this is a special conceived for the Partridge
Yeah.
Family, the singing
The
ones.
singing family.
They don't do it, then they'll say, "Let's get the Bradys
So
to do
Fred,
it."
Fred said, well, they were when they were on originally, they were in an hour together. The Partridges and the Bradys shared Fridays at 8,
Okay.
7 Central.
Uh-huh.
And so Fred Silverman thought maybe the Bradys can do it because the kids had an act that they did like at state fairs. And of course, Florence is Broadway Vegas star.
And
so
she's funny.
She can do, and she's funny. She can do anything. The only person who was really at sea was Robert Reed,
Who was he?
the dad.
Uh-huh.
And but the funny part of that is that they didn't know what they were getting into. They thought it was going to be a revival of the show, and there would be some kind of musical numbers.
But they were singing the whole time.
Yeah, they were doing a variety show. They were Carol Burnett, all of them.
Could they pull it off?
No,
How bad was it?
it was tragically bad, but it was so bad that it was good bad.
I think about these variety specials and the things that these actors were asked to do in these specials in the 70s. it feels like an extremely big ask for actors today. These folks were asked to sing, dance, do sketches, and act,
Yeah.
often on screen with characters that weren't quite human.
Right.
Um, I don't think they make celebrities like that
No, no.
anymore.
That's partially why Variety tuned out. Other
Do
than
you think that today's average TV celebrity could even do a variety show?
not the average one. I mean, Nathan Lane could do one, but he gave up trying. I mean, they wanted him in sitcoms. He's got
Yeah.
a new sitcom which is very funny coming on
Okay.
Hulu called Mid-Century Modern,
Okay.
which is Will and Grace meets the Golden Girls.
Yeah.
So you tune in, you'll laugh. But Nathan could do it. Marty Short and Maya Rudolph tried one together,
Oh,
which
really?
was very funny
Okay.
and but didn't last.
Yeah.
And Dana Carvey did one that didn't last either.
Why
But
don't they last?
because the form is desiccated,
Why?
and because they can't be as loose-limbed as SNL.
Why
Marty and
not?
Maya couldn't be because they're on at 8 o'clock at night, and the
Oh.
people who sell Kraft cheese will not buy the time
If
to
it's too
watch you
raunchy.
do the stuff that people do on SNL at 11:30.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you
And
miss it?
the audience is not that dumb; they know that.
Yeah. Do you miss that variety shows?
I do, yeah, but then I'm from another generation or
Yeah.
two.
I think I miss it too. I think I would have enjoyed it. I think I would have enjoyed it.
Oh, it was fun. I mean, there was somebody every night. There was Dean Martin. There was Flip Wilson. There was Carol. I mean, way back, Sid Caesar, Jackie Gleason. When I grew up, the Jackie Gleason show was hysterical, and I
Yeah.
loved it.
It also felt like it was giving us a different kind of TV, one that felt much more improvisational.
Yeah,
And I feel like when I watch TV now, s- let's put reality TV on the side, but like
yeah.
everything else is very scripted, very written, and there's not
Oh, yeah.
there's less space for vamping, for improvisation.
One reason why Curb Your Enthusiasm is so popular is because it
They
wasn't
improv'd a lot.
written
Yeah.
word for word.
Yeah.
It was the actors were free to roam, but that was also HBO.
Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
think we miss something culturally when we have less of that stuff on TV?
Just the lunacy of it, and I think television originally was successful because there were names coming into your living room. You made an appointment to watch them at 8 o'clock 9 o'clock on Monday nights. You wanted to see what the Ricardos were doing.
Yeah.
You loved Lucille Ball.
Yeah.
And she was not life sized. She was TV screen sized.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got a kick out of that relationship, which of course mystified me because it was a white girl married to a Cuban guy, and it was the 50s, and nobody mentioned that.
Yeah. It's like, okay, it's fine.
Nobody mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought the Eisenhower era, was a lot, maybe not as innocent as we think.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a little bit of subversive television, I thought,
Yeah.
even back then. So, but that was the whole medium was about someone like Judy Garland coming at you
Mhm.
with a song
Mhm.
and having that experience sitting in your living room watching it. And now I think we've all grown up with being able to have that experience on our phone.
Well, and this is what's crazy. It's like so much of the improvisational energy that I hear you talking about that existed in variety shows back in the day, that energy now seems to exist primarily on TikTok.
Oh, right. Yes, it does. But it's so unfiltered. I mean, you're not seeing talented people most of the time. You're just seeing people making fools of themselves.
And it's like 90-second bites.
But when somebody is talented, when a Randy Rainbow comes along who has got a great satirical thrust, he makes a career out of it. So if you're looking to get into show business, get thee to TikTok immediately.
How does it feel for someone who is a veteran of TV and TV writing to sit here and say now, get to Instagram, get to TikTok? Could you have ever imagined?
Well, no, actually, I couldn't have. I mean,
Yeah.
we had a joke with Steve Martin one year on the Oscars, the year Avatar was out.
Uh-huh.
He said, and here's James Cameron, who directed Avatar. My God, was that gorgeous. The visual effects, the sound effects, it was unbelievable. I watched it on my phone. Because that is what's happening. So
Yeah.
I don't think any of us were equipped for that, but we have to
It
adapt.
is what it
There
is.
still is linear television. The dirty secret of all the streamers is their biggest shows are reruns of network shows.
NCIS, Law
Why do you
and
think
Order.
they sold Friends for billions of
Oh,
dollars?
yeah.
Big Bang.
Yeah.
I mean, going back before that, Drew Carey.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things that are familiar to people from
Yeah.
television. One of the reasons that Star Wars and the Brady Bunch, I led with them in the book, is because those
specials.
franchises have never gone away.
Yeah.
There were 7 more Brady iterations after
Mhm.
ours, and it's still if you turn on like Channel 5 somewhere, you will
They're
find
there.
Brady Bunch at 3 in the
Oh,
afternoon.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I want to talk about the different kinds of writing that you have done on TV. We've talked a lot about you writing for these variety specials for TV,
Yeah.
but you're also known for writing for award shows for a long time.
Yes.
Which is harder, writing for an award show or writing for a variety special?
Oh, well, an award show because there's more pressure. A
Yeah.
variety
What is it?
specials, they're never done live.
Yeah.
Very, very, SNL is one of the few,
Hmm.
but they never were done live. SNL was breakthrough when it happened 50 years ago. But award shows are basically live. And the hard part is people who are not used to performing as themselves,
Mm.
like Billy Crystal, Bette Midler, Robin Williams. Uh, uh, those actors don't know what to do when they haven't got a character to play. And they
Yeah.
have to come out and hopefully not have to pretend to be bantering with
Uh-huh.
somebody who they barely know,
Yeah.
or or talking about some subject which is dry at conception, like art direction.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you have to come up with something for Michelle Pfeiffer to say. There is no Michelle Pfeiffer character.
Yeah.
You have not seen Michelle Pfeiffer live at the Greek. I mean, she's a great movie star.
Yeah.
She's white gold. She's what she is.
Yeah.
But when she has to come up and talk about something, you have to find a way for her, a way in.
Yeah.
Johnny Depp was my favorite example of that
I love
because
that.
he was kind of lost, and
He's
I
always
said to
lost.
him, well, why don't we do it sort of like Captain Jack Sparrow meets Hunter Thompson,
Love it.
who were two characters he played. They're both
played.
loose, real buzzed,
Yeah.
and that became his kind of talk show persona.
I love that. How many award shows have you written for?
Oh my! I haven't kept count. I'd have to ask my accountant in the
15,
valley.
20
Oh,
more?
well, hundreds.
100.
Yeah, they had to.
Did
well,
you-
over 100? Certainly.
Did you want to do that, or did it just fall in your lap?
Oh no, I wanted to do it.
Why?
And it fell in my lap.
Why'd you want to do it?
Because
It
it's
seems like it's
fun.
really hard, though.
But it's fun hard. It's I mean when I did Hairspray, I played Edna,
Yeah.
the drag role, and she's in drag. She's a real woman, but and it was fun to go out there because the show was joyous. I mean, if I were doing Medea and killing my children 8 times a week and dragging the corpses around the stage, I would not be so
Oh,
lighthearted.
I thought you were saying Tyler Perry's Medea.
No, Medea. That's Medea. It's like Edward Norton and Ed Norton, two big
Two
differences.
different
Yeah.
people.
No,
Now I wanna see
I
you play
understand
Medea.
Vanessa Redgrave now because she does Medea. I mean, for Christ's sake, I mean, if you have to, I would have a very hard time writing tragedy.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what is the first rule or the cardinal rule for writing for an award show, for writing for like the Oscars?
Finding out the limitations of everybody who's going to present the thing and writing to them.
What
with
is a
those things in
limitation?
mind. Well, as I said, the actors often don't know who they are when they're on stage.
Huh.
But the other thing is for the host, which is what I think you're asking, is you have to be as famous as the people in the audience, and so you can make fun of them without being mean-spirited,
Huh.
because that turns them right off.
So, is that part of why someone like, what's his name? Joe Coy
Well,
did
yeah,
so bad?
Joe Coy. Most of them had never heard of Joe Coy. He's huge in his world,
Yeah.
but his world is not the world of the Golden Globes.
Yeah.
And they say, "Who is this guy who's making fun of me?"
Yeah. When you work with an Oscars host or an award show host, how much are you face to face with them, and how much is it just you in the writer's room with the other writers writing the jokes?
In my experience, I'm face to face with them a lot, and they're in the room.
They're in the room.
They're all writers themselves,
All right.
except for Ellen, who writes for herself. But Ellen was in a bad situation at the time. She was, I think, scared, and she had a writing staff on her own show, and she brought them all over, and she kind of insulated with them. So she
Huh.
was the only
So
one.
there were competing writers' rooms for Ellen?
No, we didn't get to write much for Ellen because her own people
she had her
wrote
own people
everything.
doing it.
But it's generally the case that when they are hosting a nightly show of their own, they bring their team over, and the team writes for them.
Mhm.
The team doesn't write for everybody else. Sometimes, depending on budgetary considerations, the team winds up writing for other people as well.
When do you know that you have an award show joke that's going to work? When do you know?
Well, not until they laugh. I mean, you can try it out someplace. I suppose Robin used to go to the Comedy Store.
Robin Williams.
Robin Williams, yeah, yeah, not Robin Givens. Robin Williams used to go to the Comedy Store and try things out. Billy wouldn't do anything. Billy didn't want to
Crystal.
give any of it away.
I heard that Conan and Nikki Glaser as well tested out their opening monologues for the Globes and Oscars, respectively, in comedy clubs all over LA for a while before the award shows
I
happened.
wouldn't be surprised.
I heard that Conan was like out at Akbar on the East Side trying out his jokes, and apparently Nikki Glaser did her set dozens of times before she did it
Probably,
in
but
the
probably
room.
not at the Laugh Factory or any place in town, the Improv.
Mm,
Probably at Comedy and Magic in Hermosa Beach and
really?
Flappers out in Burbank.
Do
And
you think that, when I read about these comedians doing that, it seems a little bit like overkill?
well, there's a lot riding on it. I mean, they don't want to. They don't want to mess up, and these are stand-up comics who started out that way,
Mm-hmm.
and they would have material they wrote, and they would do it, and then they would embroider. Probably what they're doing is trying something and seeing if they can make something else out of it, making something bigger out of it.
What do
Um,
you mean?
well, uh, I mean, if you're doing a joke and it's about a Kardashian
Mm-hmm.
and nobody reacts really, then not to do any Kardashian.
Yeah.
That's past maybe.
Yeah.
This is just off the top of my head,
Yeah.
but or about some kind of trying to tie in some kind of current event, or about a movie which you figure will be nominated. I
Yeah.
mean, like last year, not this one, the year before. I mean, how many jokes could you make about Barbie that Barbie didn't make about itself
Yeah.
already? So
Yeah.
that was a test. And did people really know anything about Oppenheimer, or was it just something
Exactly.
that the trade knew?
Yeah. Well, this is one of my biggest questions about how to successfully write for an award show, especially this year when you had movies like The Brutalist
Mm,
and Honora
yeah.
get a bunch of awards
Right.
and kind of dominate the award show conversation for the months leading up to the Oscars. These are movies that the industry knows,
Hmm.
but most Americans don't know,
Yeah.
and most Americans couldn't even find a theater in which to go see The
Uh, uh,
Brutalist. How do you handle that challenge as a writer when you know that the room is going to love some things that a lot of America has never heard of?
uh, you have to divide. You have to take that into account
Yeah.
and say some of these things are not going to work. By
Mm-hmm.
the time it's come to the Oscars, that's the end of the award show, Yellow Brick Road.
Uh-huh.
If they've been following this stuff, that portion
Mm-hmm.
of the audience that has been following, they know what these movies are.
Yeah.
Um, and you do this year they front loaded the show with the one movie everybody knew, which was Wicked.
Oh,
They
yeah.
brought the
They
two
start out
girls
with it.
out,
Yeah.
and that kept people watching the rest of the show.
Huh.
If they brought out Conan, or if they brought out the president of the Academy, or any of the other things, but they opened with their strongest suit with
And then
Wicked.
gave them no awards.
And then he did a couple of Dune jokes, which weren't that great, but with sight gags with the worm playing
Yeah, yeah,
harp.
yeah.
But that was because Dune has a big recognition factor as well.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's important to note that the Oscars are the only show voted on by people who actually make movies. Everything else is voted on by movie critics or people at the mall in Pacoima. It depends on what the show is. So they tend to vote differently. Even SAG, you notice this year the discrepancy. SAG voted Demi Moore because actors are very sympathetic.
Yeah, they like
And I'm
her.
sure that she got a tremendous amount of votes because all the actors who were in the Academy are SAG members and voted them both.
Yeah.
But I think other people in the Academy who are not in SAG voted for Mikey Madison, and that is why
Yeah. Yeah.
she won.
Is a room of film buffs who make movies
Yeah.
in a space like the Oscars, are they extra hard to write for because they're a little self-serious?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're less Hollywood centric than they used to be. You watch those old shows with Bob Hope and Johnny Carson,
Yeah.
and everybody it was Hollywood
Yeah.
studios.
Now it's
Everybody
very
was a studio.
international.
Yeah, now it's very international. It's very diverse. It's younger. It's also mostly indie filmmakers. Very few people who vote now in the Academy
Who don't
actually
strike me as a fun-loving bunch.
well, they're serious in what
Yeah.
they write about. They're predisposed to things that took a shot.
When you're writing for a show like the Oscars, are there certain things that everyone knows are just off limits?
Um, yeah, I mean, but the general things. I
Like
mean,
what?
you can't swear. I mean, like Kieran Culkin came up, and he's totally aware that you can't go on an F-bomb rant,
Yeah.
and he did.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
that's
What
'cause
else?
in the moment. People are so excited because they
Yeah.
won,
Yeah.
they forget. But I mean, if somebody died, that's generally not a good subject for humor.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they seriously got blowback on Titanic because so many people died on the Titanic.
Yeah.
It was 70 years later.
Yeah.
It's really too soon.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, a tragic example is a tragic example. So I understand that. But that's pretty much. I mean, there's certain things Billy had a joke. The Basic Instinct
Billy
year.
Crystal.
Billy Crystal had a joke. The instant Basic Instinct year about
For those who
Sharon
forgot,
Stone.
Sharon Stone's iconic scene
Yeah,
in this
iconic
film.
scene where
She's seated, wearing a white dress, and she crosses her legs the other way, and you see inside.
Right. And unbeknownst to us, it followed a clip that we had not seen of women in film. The theme of the show, and the print had arrived wet, which meant nobody had seen it except the censor. And so he went out and did a joke afterwards saying, "This is ironic, women in film, because the biggest part this year for a woman was Sharon Stone in Basic Instinct." And of course, the audience was kind of going, "Oh," because they were in tears from the clip. The clip was gorgeous.
Yeah.
And of course, they cut to Sharon. And I was hoping she would play along and cross
What did
her
she do?
legs, but no, she was not having it either.
Yeah. What is, and be honest, in all of your years writing for award shows, what is your worst joke to ever make it to air on an award show?
God, who knows? I mean, the worst one. You asked me to pick out the nicest, the most rancid piece of dung in the pile.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Think on it.
I wouldn't know what to say. There's some that didn't work, but
Give me one of those.
I don't remember them. They didn't work.
All right, then what was your favorite one? Your favorite award show joke ever?
My favorite award show joke ever.
That you wrote.
It didn't make it onto the air, but it was.
How dare they? Tell me the
know.
joke.
It was
Tell
Steve
it now.
Martin. He got nervous. It was he was gonna the first time he'd hosted, he was gonna come out after the monologue and say, "I have good news and bad news." Bad news is my fly was open throughout the monologue. Good news is the camera puts on 10 pounds.
That's good.
It's a good joke.
He didn't
loved
say
it.
it.
No, he got scared, and just before he
That's
went
a
out,
good
he said,
joke.
"I'm not doing the cock
In
joke."
that moment, what do? Are you like, come on, dude?
Well, he said I couldn't. He's about to confront a billion people. I can't start an argument with him about how good it is. I just did go with it. But what I did say, I turned to the stage manager and I said, "We're cutting the cock joke." And the stage manager said into a microphone, "The cock joke has been cut," and the whole audience heard it. And, I'm looking out. There's Judi Dench looking at her program. Cock joke, cock joke, cock joke. So he never got to do that.
I love it.
We did it here on KCRW.
We sure did. Support your local member station. Can we talk about one of the stranger moments in Oscar history that you had a part in? To open the show, we've got Rob Lowe singing, walking through the crowd with Snow White. How did that happen, and what was that?
Well, it was Alan Carr, who was a very flamboyant producer who produced Grease. That was his huge hit.
Mm-hmm.
And on Broadway, La Cage aux Folles.
Mm-hmm.
And had been a manager and was now a big flamboyant Hollywood party giver and producer of a big hit musical. And so the Academy went to him to shake up the show. And they said, "We want you to young it up and do new things." And he had seen a show in San Francisco called Beach Blanket Babylon, which was a long-running review starring Snow White, going to San Francisco and discovering all the colorful denizens of San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
So he imported that whole show down to L.A., and Snow White was now coming home to Hollywood. And he built the Coconut Grove nightclub on the stage, and he peopled it with Golden Age stars. But unfortunately, they were not as golden as they had been.
Okay.
They were somewhat tarnished. And the audience's immediate response was, "Oh, my God. Oh, my God, what happened to her?" Oh. So the audience in the house was kind of like gobsmacked.
Really?
Meanwhile, here comes Snow White, played by an actress no one knows, dancing down the aisle and trying to interact with unprepared celebrities.
No one knows it's going to happen.
No one knows it's going to happen.
All of a sudden, Snow White's dancing down the aisle.
And some of them, no one wants to play along because a lot of them are there because it's a big night and they might win and they probably will lose. But so she's getting nothing from them. And then she comes up on stage and she does this. A couple of numbers happen, and then all of a sudden Rob Lowe appears. Rob Lowe appeared because we had to have a young element in the number.
Okay.
So Alan said, "Who do I get?" And nobody wanted to do it. Rob Lowe said, "I'll do it." He would dance with Snow White. And they sing, of course, what else but Proud Mary. Why?
Snow White and Snow White
and
And
Rob
Rob
Lowe
Lowe sing
sing
Proud Mary.
Sing and Dance to Proud Mary. Now, this was
Can
all
Rob sing?
Alan. Rob can sing. Oh, yeah, absolutely. He
All
can
right.
sing. Yeah, he was not bad. And then the number ends with a bunch of other hysterical stuff. And uh, the show was okay after that, but people remember that number because the guy running Disney at the time sued over the use of Snow White
Why?
because was mad at Alan, basically.
He should have been
And
happy Snow White's in the movie.
He was mad at the
or the
Academy.
show.
Well, when you run Disney, you have
You're cautious.
you have bigger things to be mad about. I thought, but it's in the book, the whole description of what actually happened. But as a result, the Academy, he sued the Academy. Snow White was in the public domain. Hello, she's a fairy tale.
Yeah.
And there was a Snow White coffee shop on Hollywood Boulevard for 50 years.
Really?
Nobody ever sued them.
Yeah.
So, and we just had to make sure that her costume was not identical, and every legal team signed off on it.
Uh-huh.
Nevertheless, he sued because he was, he's gone now. And then it kind of died down, and then 2 weeks later, Rob Lowe's sex tape surfaced.
After the Snow White moment.
Rob
Okay.
Lowe had gone to the Democratic Convention, the Dukakis Convention, you should pardon the expression, in Atlanta in '88,
Uh-huh.
and was made a sex tape with an underage girl.
Mm-hmm.
And every time this was announced on the air, was Rob Lowe most recently seen dancing with Snow White in the Academy
Don't
Award
bring Snow
that
White
Walt
into
Disney
this.
sued over. Is
That's
now
funny.
on the sex tape. And that week, Rob went on SNL and apologized, called himself the poster child for bad behavior.
Huh.
He has apologized ceaselessly for 40 years in
Yeah.
2 different memoirs.
Yeah.
I mean, he's come to own it.
Yeah.
But as a result of that, I think the show was inculcated in the history of disasters.
Yeah.
While the show got great ratings and was not all that bad, and then the house was cleaned of everybody who had worked on it.
Uh-huh.
But I came back the next year with Billy Crystal.
Yeah. Which host was your favorite of all time?
I don't really have a favorite, but I will say the most interesting was Hugh Jackman because he was not a host. He's an actor and a musical comedy guy,
Mm-hmm.
but and he knows who Hugh Jackman is when he's on stage.
Yeah.
So he was unusual and different. Did a bunch of musical stuff, and people were not expecting anything. I think we had done 2 Tony shows before that, so
Okay.
he
So you know
he
him.
had showed his chops.
Yeah.
So I had a good time with everybody.
I want to pivot and talk about just like joke writing and comedy writing. I think there are a lot of people who would love to have the career that you have and have had, writing all kinds of funny things for all kinds of funny people for decades. What is the number one piece of advice you give to folks that want to break into this world?
Well, be funny. That's first.
Okay.
I used to say you have to go hang out at the clubs and find somebody you can start writing for, and it will if it works, it will breed more work. But
Mhm.
now I keep saying, go to the internet, Randy Rainbow, just write something, do it yourself, bring in somebody to do it. Let people know you're the mind behind it, because there are people trolling the internet as we speak in every major agency and studio and network,
Looking for the next
looking
big
for the
thing.
next big thing as the new direction. That's what they said in A Hard Day's Night.
Yeah.
Are you the key to the new direction?
Does having to do it that way make the art better or worse? Is this better for the craft than the old school model of like
I
going to the
don't
clubs?
think we know yet. I mean, I think
Huh.
I think it hasn't shaken out yet. But it's easier. The access to power is easier than it was to get people to read your material.
Mm.
I mean, if you would submit to somebody, they were routinely rejected because their lawyers told them they'll come back at you if you ever do anything similar to this, claiming you stole it from them while it was in your possession. So
Huh.
you go on record as saying, I have not looked at this while it
Yeah.
was in my possession. I am returning it to you summarily. And
Those days are over. Now
well,
if
they
you're
still may
online-
go after you. It
Yeah.
depends on how close it is.
Yeah, yeah. Can anyone be funny? You say the first rule is be funny, but can everyone just be
Well,
funny?
they can be funny. Can they be funny under pressure? Can they write funny? Can they act funny? Can they be funny more than once?
Is that a gift people have or don't have?
Yeah, of course. I mean,
Okay.
Your Aunt Selma who cut wind at Thanksgiving at dinner, that's funny once.
Yeah.
Unless she does it a lot, then it's an annoyance.
Then it's no longer funny. yeah.
Exactly. But it was funny the one time.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to recreate that moment on cue or parlay it into something else. And that is a gift.
If you are mentoring a young up and coming writer who wants to do it and wants to make it, and you just realize that they're just not funny, do you tell them?
Well, not in so many words.
What do you say?
Well, you say this is reminiscent of so and so, and I think, you know, as I say, you can be encouraged to death. I would say, I would say this may not be what your best gift.
Have you ever had to say that to somebody?
Oh yeah, I have a few times.
Talk me through that process.
And they get mad. They don't want to hear that.
What do they say to you?
Well, what do you know? You know, and I say,
You know a lot.
You came to me to begin with. I'm just telling you. You want me to be honest, or you want me to blow smoke?
Yeah.
And you know, and if they can take it, they can take it. And I also have to depend. Who is it? I mean, is it somebody I know and care about?
Yeah.
Or is it somebody who is just kind of, you know, coming for free advice from Yoda?
How would you approach your career differently if you were starting out now as opposed to when you did start out?
Interesting, because I always wanted to perform. So
Really?
what's interesting is I never thought of myself as a writer, and I was a child actor, not a child star, but we'd be in rehab hashing this out.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to perform, and I was heavy, and I had a deep voice, and I was not athletic, and I was auditioning against actors who were way older than I was,
Mhm.
and I was inauthentic. So I was never going to grow into. I had to wait to grow into those roles. So I
Mhm.
was writing in the interim.
Huh.
And I had a gift for that, and my parents encouraged it because they said, "Write for a newspaper; they'll never die."
Yeah.
Who knew?
Who knew?
So that's how I wound up at the Chicago Tribune, and that's where I met Bette Midler and started writing for her.
Tell me how you met Bette Midler.
She was on Broadway in Fiddler on the Roof,
Uh-huh.
getting married every night on stage to Leonard Fry, and she came out. She had an act that she would do down the street at the Improv
After the show.
After the show,
That's amazing.
yeah, and the manager of the Improv, but the owner, Bud Friedman, was her manager, and sent her to Chicago to a club called Mr. Kelly's, which
Mhm.
was a famous club where a lot of Mort Saul, Shelley Berman, Bob Newhart, these famous comics and jazz people, Sarah Vaughan, came out of, and she went there and opened, and he called me and said, "If would you go look at her if you like her? Would you write about her?"
Huh.
And I went, and I thought she was terrific, and
Uh-huh.
I said, "You're very funny. You should talk more." And she
Huh.
said, "You got any lines?" And that was the beginning, and I started writing for her.
What did you
then.
write for her?
I wrote local jokes about Chicago, which astounded the audience that she knew any of this stuff.
Yeah.
And then I would call people. I was the TV critic at the time,
Okay.
and we would do these junkets a lot.
Mhm.
And so I knew other TV critics. So wherever
Mhm.
she played, I'd call them ahead of time and say,
Go
"What
see
could
her.
we make fun of in Cincinnati?" And they would tell me stuff, and we'd write it, and then she'd learn it and do it, and they
Really?
would go, "Oh my God, how did she know that?"
That's amazing.
And that was partially how she made her reputation as being on the money locally. And Bette's whole thing was, "I am one of you." I mean,
Which is wild because she's not.
Yeah,
She's
well, her
so much
whole-
more talented than
well,
all of us.
remember, this is the early '70s. She was in the shadow of Barbra Streisand. She
Mm.
was not a conventional beauty, and she also, her whole act was trash with class.
Okay.
Trash with flash. That was what
Yeah.
it was. I mean, she did rock and roll and she did old ballads, but she would mine music that was throwaway. Her
Mhm.
first hit was "Do You Want to Dance," which was a very bouncy rock,
Huh.
jitterbug. Do you want to dance? And she turned it into this epic, erotic languor.
Mhm.
And obviously, she wasn't asking you to dance.
Yeah.
I mean, and it was passionate, and people responded because she found the beauty in that thing that
Mhm.
nobody knew was there.
Yeah.
And that was her genius. Aside from that, she was always, the idea of her was, well, we have a medley. We searched far and wide for this material. And we came up with 2 tunes.
Uh-huh.
And it was always, nothing was quite up to the Vegas snuff that you were expecting
Yeah.
from her.
Yeah.
It was always, I'm thrown together. My look was thrown together. And a lot of people out there said, "You know what? I'm thrown together too. I can live."
Yeah.
She was inspiration.
Should she host the Oscars?
Well, she's turned it down many times.
Really?
Yeah, she doesn't want to do it.
Why not? It'd be
Well,
great.
because you have to keep reloading.
Yeah.
And she just didn't want to do it with changing costumes and all that kind of stuff. And she also felt that, when she's been on, does one category and she steals the show. So it's better that way.
Okay. Yeah.
Or she sings one of the songs.
Yeah. I want to ask what you think about the state of comedy and comedic writing on TV. Because reading your book and talking through these stories with you, feels like the 70s and 80s and perhaps even 90s were just like full of funny people writing funny things for the small screen. I watch TV today and it feels like there's less of that. Would you agree?
Well, there's probably less. I don't know if there's less. I mean, because there's more reality. The writer's strike before this one cemented reality television.
Yeah.
Because for what it cost, I mean, my friend Marta Kaufman, who created Friends, said toward the end it cost $1 million to turn the lights on,
Really?
and that was for the 6 of them, and everything else was more. So you're going into deficit financing when you do a show like that.
Yeah.
And now, of course, it's paid off
Several
way
times.
over.
Yeah.
That's Friends. That's
Yeah.
one show, but the opportunities for that are less than they used to be because of the way the business is now structured, and because when we went on strike, reality came in, and you can for the kind of money it takes to put together a sitcom, you can do
Several shows.
Real Housewives of Warsaw, for 20 years. so why not? So that has and there's a lot of safe television. I mean, Dick Wolf does great work, but there's Law and Order night, there's FBI night. I mean, because they know that will deliver a certain
Yeah.
audience. And again, we're talking about narrowcasting.
Are you dismayed by this new reality?
Yeah, because there's less work. I'm dismayed by I am dismayed by shows that are done in like movies.
What do you
shows
mean?
that are shot without an audience,
Mm-hmm.
and they throw a laugh track on them or no laugh track at all.
Mm-hmm.
Because I used to be what they call the Thursday guy, which is when they were shooting in front of a live audience, they would sit down on a Monday, say, and they would do the show on Wednesday. They'd show it to the network, and on Thursday, they would have to address the network notes, but they were moving on already to next week's show. So a new team would come in and fluff up that show, and we would be on the floor on the Friday taping, changing things as it went along, because we were reacting to a real audience,
Yeah.
not a laugh track. So I missed that because there are very few of those things now.
Do you think that makes for better comedic TV?
I think it makes for I don't know, better. It's a certain kind of comedic TV. I mean, it means less jobs for people like me when everything is sort of shot like Sex and the City, which is shot like a movie.
Oh, totally, totally. What does Bruce Vilanch want Bruce Vilanch's legacy to be?
He was kind.
I didn't expect that.
Yeah, he was kind.
Say more.
Well, because so many people are not,
Yeah.
especially in show business. I mean, so many people are alpha creatures, by which I mean they have their eye on the prize constantly, and they're great when they're fun, but you can be bleeding in the road, and they will drive over you because they have someplace to go. And I have found that that's not a great way to live. It's a great way to become president of the United States, but it's not a great way to live. And I want to be remembered for that, for being kind.
I love that.
When I could have been such a coos.
Bruce says be kind. I think that's a perfect note on which to leave it. Tell folks again the name of your book, which they should go buy and read.
Because it seemed like a bad idea at the time.
Stories of some of the worst TV writing
How
ever.
I wrote the worst TV shows in history and some other things.
I love it. I love it. Bruce, thank you for coming here and talking with me.
That was fabulous.
We like to have all of our guests sign a beach ball
Well,
before
of
they
course,
leave. Will
because
you
we're
sign this
at
for
the
me?
beach.
Yes,
Sure.
we are at the beach. I'm going to give you the ball.
Thank you. Give me the ball, give me the ball, give me the ball.
And I'm
Yeah.
going to give you a Sharpie. On that note, as you sign, listeners, do 2 things once this show is over. Viewers, too. Go find the Star Wars Holiday Special and go find Rob Lowe singing with Snow White at the Oscars. You deserve it. Okay, till next time. Have a great weekend.